Hi, everyone, and welcome to another special Talking Insomnia episode. We have Alexander here. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Super nice having you. And for those of you who don't know Alexander, you were a member of our Insomnia Immunity Program, graduated a couple months back, and so glad you're here again. So, without further ado, actually, tell us a little bit about your story, how insomnia started, and we'll go from there.
Sure, yeah. So I guess I'll try to make it quick because my head is so long and detailed. But it really goes back to one of my earliest childhood memories I remember was I was had this morbid sense of terror of being the last kid awake at the sleepover. Like I just always had this weird thing with sleep. And then even by the time I was in high school, I remember I had all these negative sort of neuroses around it. Like it was so like almost a one-to-one correlation. Like if I didn't sleep, I was going to get sick, like this type of thing. But it had never really snowballed into this monster that it eventually became until I was in law school in 2017. And like a lot of people, I mean, it's just such a high stress environment, a lot of deadlines. And already, I think a lot of insomniacs tend to basically, you know, like a lot of calendars and different, things and obsessing with time and achievement and lots of pressure and this type of thing. And it was just this perfect storm because I also did not want to be a lawyer. I did not want to be there. So it was like this existential dread on top of it. And it was the first night I remember I went to sleep and I just didn't sleep at all. And I had class or something the next day and pretty normal now looking back, but it just opened up this sort of pit in my brain. Like I didn't even know that was a possibility. And oh my God, you know, I need to fix this and just totally spiraled. And every single night from then on, it was like it started one night and it just never stopped where it's what I would think about every night. Like I have to sleep tonight or else, this horrible thing is going to happen. And once I realized, I had so lost this confidence, this belief in that I could sleep because before I just didn't even think about it, and it just spiraled. And I ended up leaving law school, but obviously didn't leave my sleep problems. They kind of followed me. And for the next really year and a half, it was just really bad, like just constant. I basically fell into this pattern, like 2 days on, 1 day off, where I would not sleep hardly at all the first 2 days, basically as the sun's coming up, which I also learned is pretty normal. Then I would be like, I didn't sleep at all. And finally I'd give up and fall asleep. And so it would be like those two horrible nights. And then I'd just be so exhausted. I'd fall into bed that third night and just crash and then start over again. And so I was stuck in this cycle. And it was just, I felt just totally lost and confused. I had no idea what was happening. Um, Basically all day, OCD brain. I would just be every single thing I did all day long. How is this gonna affect my sleep? And if I do this, then will I sleep? And what I ate and where I went and who I saw and every single thing, like the most minute detail of how I was sitting, it was like everything would determine whether I was gonna sleep at night. And so all day, it's building up and building up and building up until every night it felt like, I was taking a test that I inevitably failed, was like all this pressure. So then, of course, by the time I'm finally getting into bed, um, I already am so anxious. And then I would kind of be in bed and relaxing. And this was always how it worked for me. And then as soon as I started to feel sleep coming on, like almost concretely, like a voice in my head was like, it's happening, it's happening, it's happening right now. This moment you've been waiting for. And of course, when it happens, then, it runs away. Right. And then as soon as it's gone, in my head is now I'm not going to sleep at all tonight. And just basically the rest of the night was like rolling panic attacks, just thinking of all these things I had to do the next day. And now I'm not gonna be able to do this. So then I'm gonna get sick and I have to do that. And just like the blood beating in my ears and like sweating and could hardly breathe. And yeah, I was just totally, it was that for a year and a half. I started going to see all these doctors and experts. And I think some of them meant well, but the result was just like almost making the problem worse, where it was just I was prescribed all these wacky things to do and to try, and it was almost like I would leave these classes thinking like, okay, now I have to do X, Y, and Z. And now if I don't do that, then of course I'm not going to sleep. Like it added even more stress and even more things I seem to be failing at. And they prescribed me sleeping pills. I never liked them. I would take them for like, you know, an emergency. But I actually haven't even told many people in my life this, but what I started doing was I started drinking in the middle of the night, basically. Like I was just so unable to sit with that pain. It was just so acute. And I just anything not to feel it, that I remember the first night I got up and I went and I was like, maybe I'll have a beer. Like that calms me down. And probably because I left bed and, you know, distracted myself, I went back into bed and I slept and I thought, oh, you know, maybe I found a solution. And for like a full year, I would just drink almost every single night because I couldn't stand it and I didn't know what else to do. Um, and that was for about a year and a half. And then for, I think Michelle used this language, like she found a truce. So then I was kind of in that stage where like if I did everything correct and I didn't have something the next day, you know, never mind I was doing things every day, but like if I didn't have something, you know, messing up my calendar or whatever, or traveling or whatever, then I could sleep if I did everything fine most nights. And that was for about a year. And so the whole thing was about 3 years. And then COVID hit in 2020 and everyone's, you know, anxiety like went crazy. And it was like the best thing ever for me, I guess. I guess I was so focused on like all of the like neurotic energy I had towards sleep just pivoted to like monitoring the COVID situation. And I just had none left to be like, did I or didn't I sleep? And I just started sleeping again. Plus, I wasn't leaving my house, which helped. But yeah. And then I remember like one day turned to 2 days, and then 3 months later, I was like, hey, I've been sleeping really well. Um, and I thought, you know, I don't even want to figure out what happened. It's just some mystery. It came back, and I just not even gonna think about it. And I slept well for like 2 full years, and it was really good. I just thought, whatever mysterious process, it's working again. So I had a lot of my like neuroses around sleep. Definitely, like I needed 8 or 9 hours, and I would be miserable the next day, and this type of stuff. But for some reason, I just had that belief that I could sleep again, and as soon as that came back, I could sleep um, for about 2 years. And then this was in February of this year. A few things had happened all at once. I'd been under a ton of stress. I was caring for a sick family member who ended up passing away. I just moved to New York and I was so excited to be here. You know, all of these hopes in this new chapter of my life and a job and friends and a relationship. Like I was looking forward to it all. And so there was positive things, but just so much pressure on the situation. And then I also had like a Juul, like a nicotine vape that I was like, didn't like it. I wanted to quit. And as I also realized is pretty normal for different, not med, well, it's not a medicine, but things your brain is addicted to. When I stopped, I couldn't sleep and it messed up my sleep. And I remember 1, 2 days thinking, like, not even thinking about it. I just, you know, I'm not sleeping, whatever. But then after a week, I made the mistake at like looking at a calendar and it's just like everything just kind of like the dam broke and it just like the sky fell on my shoulders and I thought, oh my god, you know, it's back. Like it robbed the joy of my life for 3 years, and I thought, I just moved here, I can't do 3 more years of this, of like, you know, no joy in my life. So I was like, I gotta, it's funny, I was going through my some notes from that time and I had used the language like I want to beat it into submission, which now I'm like is totally the wrong approach. But I was like, I will do anything to not go through this again. And so I just basically cast a wide net. And I, you know, was the first time I tried sleep restriction therapy. And if someone could design like a therapy to like my worst torture, it would be sleep restriction therapy. I mean, it broke me in a way that I just didn't even realize was possible. Like I did it for 5 weeks. I mean, because it's like obsessively tracking like to the minute of how much you've been sleeping. And then it's like you have 2 good nights and oh, you didn't sleep. Then you get punished by sleeping even less. And it was just like, I remember I've been doing it for 5 weeks and nothing was getting better. I was worse. I mean, 5 weeks later, I was worse than when I started. And I was thinking like, this is the gold standard, you know, and it's not working for me. And I felt just, I had stopped seeing my friends. I was barely leaving the house. I had canceled all my dates. Like I hadn't even told my family what was happening. And I was just spiraling and it was just so bad. And I was in just a state of such utter despair. I mean, I remember distinctly walking to home from the grocery store thinking like, I'm not getting any better. And this, what else is there? Like, there's just no hope. Like, this is it. This is for the rest of my life. And my dad called me, and I was dodging the calls because I was a mess. And I remember just like it all just crushed, like hit me so hard and in public, like a crazy person. Like I fell on the curb, just like weeping. Like, this is the rest of my life, like what am I going to do? And I remember thinking like, I would never even close to this, but I was like, I mean, I would almost rather be dead than keep torturing myself like this. Like, this is just, it was literal torture for me. And it's so funny how things work, because I got home from the grocery store and the sun had gone down. I was like sitting in my apartment in the dark, and I got an email I had emailed so many different people looking for help. And he was like, I'm full with my clients, but you should check out Daniel Erickson. Here's his YouTube channel. And it was like right after that, just rock bottom. And I was like, oh, like another thing, really? But I did. And I think I sat for like 5 hours that night. Like, I didn't move. I just like obsessively consumed all of these videos. And it was the first time that I saw hope in years. I mean, the first person to just understand what was happening to me. I'd seen all these people and no one seemed to even know. I remember one of the videos was like befriending wakefulness, where you had explained, a lot of people think it's like this fear of sleep, and so much is put on sleep, but actually you're afraid of being awake when you're not supposed to. And that just like like my head, I remember I like was startled and like paused the video, like, oh my God, I've thought about nothing but this for years and I never connected those dots. And since then, I mean, just my whole life changed. Like, I just basically started really embracing a lot of this anxiety. And I thought I was in touch with myself before, but I realized I was all in my head, and I was so averse to feeling these things that, I realized like my body is not my enemy. It's trying to send me, really, it's trying to help me, And so you could use the metaphor like a friend who's you're ignoring, trying to warn you. What do? They scream louder. And so from then on, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to like, sit back and almost like clouds passing, like just try to watch it. And it was very uncomfortable at the beginning, but I got so in tune with this type of thing that slowly, I remember like I would sit with my anxiety, and this is when it really started to kind of go away, and hold it, and I also started meditating a lot and reading a lot of like Buddhism and stuff that started really went well with a lot of this. And I would sit with it before I was going to bed, this monster, and say to like my body, my brain, my nervous system, whatever it was, just no judgment, no expectations. Like, if honestly, this is what you need, is to like give me these horrible panic attacks, keep me up all night long. Like, that's what you need tonight. Just do it. Like, please, I'm not going to fight you. Go ahead. I have like, I almost is like a positive. And as soon as that happened, like it just dimmed and it dimmed and it dimmed until it was just almost gone. I mean, it would be gone for a few weeks and then it would come back. But basically, whenever it came back, I'd fall into these patterns of looking at calendars and obsessing about time. And I need to achieve this by this age and do this by this time. And as soon as I would fall back into that pattern, I would I'd have a bad night. And then the next day I would think, I'm doing it again. Like, I got to slow down, appreciate the moment, start to be in touch with myself, to the point that inevitably when I have a bad night now, I mean, I haven't had one in a while now, but it's like almost as it's happening, I'm thinking like, that means I'm going to have a great day tomorrow, because I'm going to be so much more present and so much more, living my life and not obsessively in my head. That it's now like, oh, when I do start to get nervous or that panic will randomly come out of nowhere, it's like my body has this equal response of like, it's almost a good thing. Like, I almost hope that happens, because then it's going to slow you down the next day and you're going to have a great day. And it's so reframed just how I approach just everything, that it sounds weird to say, but it's like insomnia, honestly, is one of the best things that's ever happened to me. As crazy as that sounds, but it's very true.
Wow, that was an incredible story, Alexander. Like, you're an incredible storyteller, and as you tell, I haven't had a question. I've just been absorbing this, and that was so powerful and wonderful. I'm so glad you shared it. And that said, of course, I have so many like little questions that I want to ask you, and to give a lot of value to our audience here. And Let's start with just a little bit more on the kind of like, as this was developing, like you did, you left law school, but that was in part because you actually found that you didn't want to do that, right? Or was that the reason? Or
Yeah, so I never wanted to go to law school. And I just was like, I was 23 and I had been living abroad, and I was like, I need like a more concrete path. And everyone in my life pointed me to law school. I've heard my entire life that I should do that. But it's like, as soon as I got there, I mean, my body was in literal revolt. Like, I did not want to be there. And it's funny because I didn't recognize this at the time, but it was the first time my insomnia was like warning me. It was like a smoke alarm. And at the time I was just like, I was so miserable. I did hear it in a weird way, but it was warning me like, pay attention here, something's wrong. And I thought, okay, then I'll leave and I'll start sleeping again. And it didn't really work like that. Like, there's that, like an old saying, like, wherever you go, there you are. And I had all of these fears now, and of course they followed me. Like, um, for the next few years, it's just like, you have an experience, and it's like, it's just an experience until you attach sort of like a hatred or an aversion to it, and then you start to suffer from it, and you can't really run away from it. Like, you
yeah.
either you keep running, or eventually you face it, and you get free from it. But it just chased me until it got worse and worse and worse, and I couldn't understand, because I thought, I keep him like relinquishing responsibilities, and it's still following me. Like, what the heck's going on? Yeah.
No, nice. You added some kind of extra value and insight there to the question, or to the answer. And I just really do want to point out for anyone tuning in there that it's really not, sometimes people have this idea that, oh, I couldn't do this because of my insomnia. So I just want to point out to everyone that that wasn't the story with you, Alexander. It was very different. So just a little pointer. Now, moving forward in the story, yeah, you then, as this became really intense, you started going to like doctors, therapists, and you said you got all kinds of advice that wasn't actually helpful at all. Can you mention some of the things that you heard that kind of wasn't helpful at all?
Oh my gosh, I heard a whole range of things. I mean, I don't even know how many people, but they had me like swimming laps, and like all of these crazy things that, even so, I think a lot of them had linked that it was like, you have an overactive nervous system. But that was really as far as it went. And so a lot of the prescriptions were like trying, other than pills, were like trying to calm down my nervous system. So that was the first time I started meditating. But I was in such a state of hyperarousal that as soon as I quieted my mind, of course, I just felt panic. I was feeling panic for the first time, and I would basically, it would freak me out even more. And I thought, this is making me even worse, because I was closing my eyes, like trying to, like, this is not how you meditate. I was doing it so wrong, but like, I need to sleep. I need to sleep. Like, even grasping harder at this thing, and it just pushed it further away. Um, but otherwise, like, I did even group classes and stuff. I just did all different types of things, and I would go and sleep, and they would hook me up to all the wires, and it just freaked me out even more. And it's funny because I thought I had really searched everywhere. I mean, this was in 2017, 2018, and I'm like, where was all this information? Like, is this all brand new? Like, I didn't hear anything that was even similar to a lot of the approach that you take, that I'm like, it's just so groundbreaking to me. I can't believe wasn't that long ago, and I'd never heard anything similar.
Now, I'm so happy you found our little ecosystem, and on one hand, I'm really excited that you find it groundbreaking, and I think in many ways it is, but also kind of sad because there's so many people that need to hear this that haven't gotten it yet. But just to stay just for 1 second on this topic before we continue looking at your story. One who you might have met her, you might have overlapped with her, but she was a student in the Insomnia Immunity program named Sanya. She did a TED talk, and TED decided to kind of actually not actually release her YouTube video for the TED talk, because they said that kind of the therapies you talk about need further like scientific validation, and that really again highlighted that what we're sharing here is sort of groundbreaking. It is new, which is in a way exciting, but also like it needs to get out there, so it's a little tricky. But anyway, thanks to you being here, more people will hear about, which is fantastic. So I'll just leave it there, and then go on to say that I think the idea, like, in a way they were right, right? We have like a hyperactive nervous system, right? You have that, but then the recommendations like swimming lapses and things like that, the intent is always like, also we need to lower, we need to kind of do something to lower the sensitivity of the nervous system, which again, does the opposite, like the message analogy again. So I think even if the intent is good, like there's a kind of a little bit lack of understanding there that leads to these recommendations being unhelpful. So with that said, let's move forward. And then the next question I had for you was, I'm really curious who, if you don't mind sharing, if you don't think this is like private or anything, who was the person who said, I'm full, but check out the sleep coach school?
I don't remember. It was someone else I found on YouTube. I think his name was Trevor.
Trevor. Yeah, I thought it might be him. Yeah, Trevor Youngquist. Yeah. Okay, I was really curious about that. I mean, now another thing I was so curious about was like, you found, our YouTube channel. You were kind of consuming it for 5 hours. You had these, you saw things so clearly, and things began to really change for you. But you still joined our program. Was it because you felt you needed a little more support on that path, or what was the idea behind that? It sounds like you're already doing so well.
Well, so I had found, I think this was like I don't know, maybe like a Saturday night. I had found the YouTube video, and then I would like signed up for the program immediately. Like I was
Okay.
basically like, okay, I'm all in. And I was just at such a point, I was like, I really wanted sort of one-on-one help. And Michelle was so great and so helpful. And I think her video was actually one of the first ones I watched, and also just one of the first people that I identified so strongly with so many of her experiences, and that sort of like isolation and the loneliness and the fear of being like, what the heck is happening to me? That was a huge struggle for me, that I would try to tell people and they just didn't understand what I was saying. And so to hear her story and then see that she was coaching as well, I was like, okay, I'm all in on this.
I got it. Very, very nice. And how, were there, it sounds like you just by consuming like the content, you found a lot of, like, you saw things very clear yourself. But what was your experience like joining the immunity program? What did you like about it? And what was it like?
Yeah, so I think it was so helpful. I mean, it walked you just step by step. I mean, I had to stop myself from like going through the entire course, like in, a few days, and just really I took detailed notes and just tried to like internalize it. And it's funny because you can like intellectually understand something so much more quickly than you can emotionally understand it. And so I would even, it just takes time, and I would get frustrated with myself because I was saying, I know this, and still my body's having this response. Like, am I doing something wrong? And Michelle had even said, like, explained, your brain has built up these patterns, and it's going to keep reminding you. And every time you react positively, you're going to sort of break that connection. And so it was so helpful to go through the course, like week by week. And as these things, and then even when you think you understand something, it's like, then something else happens. And it's like, then you're in a new phase, and then you think you're good, and then it comes back. And so it's just helpful to like learn. It just takes a while. So it's good to have it kind of measured out.
Yeah. One thing I remember from, having you in one of our dropping classes was you one time you said that you actually, you were sort of a little bit anxious, I think, at night, and you ended up not sleeping that much, but then you finally did fall asleep. And then in the morning you were like not particularly anxious. You felt kind of normal. And you were like, is that normal? And that was, I was smiling because to me it was it's just highlighted how like when our brain is kind of looking for problems, it can even think like, even like feeling normal can be like, should I feel normal? It can be like a little triggering to us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was like a distinct moment. I remember that I turned a corner, was to break that association. Because even like I had heard you guys say, this like 8-hour thing is like actually like all these associations you have about you can actually not sleep and still feel good. And I was like, yeah, but like I need sleep. I need it, like it's really important for me. And so to kind of go through it and to break that association, for me, one of the most helpful pieces of advice was to not look at the clock at night. And I thought, yeah, it's gonna, if I don't look at the clock, I'm gonna have less stress. But like I didn't understand until I had done it a few times that my brain was so automatic. Like none of this is really intentional, but it would look back and start saying, I slept this many hours this night and then this many hours this night. And that means I should, and it had equated so strongly how many hours I slept with how good I would feel, that a few days, maybe a week had gone by and my brain kind of went to go do that. And the information just wasn't there. Like there was just no possible way because I had no idea how long I slept. And that was when I was like, whoa, how I'm feeling really correlates much more to how much I think I slept than how much I slept. And so then I would, even like I would sort of get in that panicky mode. I wouldn't sleep great, but I didn't really know how much I had slept. It was all kind of blurred. And I remember the first time I woke up and I thought like, I feel like I slept 8 hours and I know I didn't. And I felt like, I failed and that I still got anxious. And I realized like the targets I was trying to hit were just the wrong targets. And once, I could decouple the time and my like performance or how I feel the next day, it all changed so quickly.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing. I remember that very clearly too. And just maybe a few final questions here. One is, oh yeah, this one. You've already touched on this, but it sounds like other areas of your life have changed after like the realizations and experiences. So can you talk about like that, how other areas of life were, I'm sure, benefited from learning from this struggle?
Yeah, no, I mean, when I say my whole life changed, like my whole life changed. Like how I do almost everything changed. Like it just coincided with this whole reframe in how I approach activities, both large, like my work, and small. Like I was so trapped in my head before and thought, there was no difference between like a fear and a reality. And so I would go through, and it actually helped me be like hyper productive through a lot of my life, that I felt like, a lot of this was like very, very important and I had to do it. And versus now I'm like, a lot of this is in my head. And I think I even had an attachment to a lot of those emotions because I thought they were positive and like, this is how you stay on track and this is how you do this. But um, shifting away from that and realizing like so many of the things that we're bombarded with constantly of like, you need 8 hours of sleep and it's like this obsessive productivity and you need to drink this much water and go on get this many steps a day. It's like, I'm sure like a part of it is healthy, but a lot of it is just causes even more stress. And once I kind of realized like, we're not machines, or we're not like a business, like we're a person, and we're meant to just kind of be. And as soon as I kind of entered that stage, like I could just go through the day and appreciate so much more. Like I wasn't thinking in the future. I was just, here I am now, and that's what's happening, And ironically, it helps me be even more productive because I'm not distracted by all of these thoughts. And so these things that I thought were helping me, like I didn't actually have to stay attached to them. And I got better just like, in my job, in my life. I started like, one of the other things was, I had totally isolated myself and I thought, I can't do that. I can't sleep, And as soon as I started saying like, oh, if I do this, it might make me nervous that I won't sleep, I thought, I'm going to do it. Like I started just saying yes to almost everything and realizing like my sleep was so tied with like a phobia of exhaustion that was really in my head, and I could do these things. And the more I packed my schedule, inevitably the less I thought about sleep. So you're just totally right in that sense that you just kind of have to go through the motions at the beginning, and then just something happens. Like it's almost not even rational as it happens.
Wow, amazing. I guess a final question here. If you could, go back in time and tell yourself something back when you were really struggling, back in maybe 2017, 18, somewhere there, what would you tell yourself?
Oof. I think I had, even until like before I started the course, I wasn't aware of how much all of this goes back to like self-criticism, and you're so hard on yourself and it just makes the problem worse. And to like sit and really listen to yourself, and like you're not failing at something, you're not doing anything wrong. I think it would have fixed a lot of that problem. Like it's not abnormal to not sleep. And it's, if I had taken, I think, a little bit more patience and compassion with myself back then, um, I think it would have been a much less bumpy road. But I think now the way that I look at it too is like that road was so bumpy and so painful, but it was so necessary. Like in so much of that suffering were these very specific lessons that I think I had to learn, and I feel like really like bumped me up a bit in life. They've helped a lot. So grateful for the whole experience as bad as it's been.
Perfect place to end. And I will just say on my end, that I'm very grateful that you decided to share this. I think it's going to help so many people out there. So thanks so much for joining, Alexander.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
All right, we'll be in touch. Bye bye.